Hello everyone. My name is
So
Sandeep.
let me introduce
So,
you first.
hello. Hi.
Yes, sir. Let me introduce first.
Yeah, great.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hardik. I'll be hosting today's session. I would love to welcome you all on the behalf of ESL IIT Guwahati. Today, management is an interdisciplinary role that combines strategy, design, leadership, and marketing to launch a successful product. Have you ever considered a job in product management? If yes, let me tell you that you are not alone. So for getting a job, you need to crack the interviews, and for teaching us to how to perform in PM interviews, we have with us today Mr. Sandeep Injarapu, Direct Product at Slice and ex-product manager at Flipkart, for explaining us how to prepare for a PM interview. Mr. Sandeep is an alumnus of IIT Guwahati. He has also worked as product manager, senior product analyst, and product analyst at MOB and general manager product at Ether Energy. So, without doing any other further ado, I would like to welcome a guest of honor, Mr. Sandeep Injar. So, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Hardik, for the introduction. Hi everyone. As Hardik said, my name is Sandeep. Uh, I'm happy to be here today, and thanks to ESL and Hardik and Ayush and the team for inviting me here. I'm really delighted to be able to speak to the students of my alma mater, especially at ESL, after a very long time. And as Hardik mentioned, I've had about 9 years of product management experience across different companies like InMobi, Flipkart, and Aether Energy, and currently at Slice. All of them were in different industries. InMobi is a advertising company in the mobile advertising space. Flipkart, as you know, is an e-commerce company. Aether Energy was an EV startup, which is currently a very emerging economy. And right now, Slice, where I'm working, it's in the space of fintech, and that is yet another emerging industry that we have. So, what I've learned from my career in the last 9 years in product management is that the fundamental principles of product management remain the same no matter which industry you work in. And that's essentially what is important to be a PM. So today I'll just take you through my journey and maybe let me share my screen. Hardik, let me know if my screen is visible.
Yeah, sure, sir. Yeah, your screen is visible.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to quickly take you through what I'm going to talk about today. And here's what it is briefly. So, first, a couple of things, mostly my journey as a PM and what it has been. And the reason why PM career has become such a popular choice nowadays. And then overall, we just talk about some myths and reality of like what actually is constituting a good PM, right? And in addition, towards the end of it, the second part of the session, we talk about the companies on how to approach them, the interview process, and the way to prepare for that. So, without anything, let me just. So, uh, I have about 9 years of experience, and right now, where I'm working at a company called Slice. What we are doing at Slice is we are building the credit card challenger of India. What that means is the credit card technology or itself the industry is about 50, 70 years old, and they haven't evolved the product over that long without any changes. The bank processes are pretty sluggish, but most of the present generation or the generation Z or like maybe Y, whichever we want to call it, have a very high expectations of the product, and they expect fast moving products. So which is what Slice is trying to build, and I'm leading the product management at Slice as a director. So product management by taking up a startup job in Bombay back in 2009, right? I did have a campus placement, And probably I would say, fortunately, it was also the year of recession, where the company which I was placed in had said that we would delay the placement by about a couple of months. And that gave me idle time, and I decided that I might want to take up a job in between for experience. And that made me land into a startup, and from there I discovered product management is a very, very interesting path to pursue, and eventually I got into product management. So that's my journey. And I'll briefly tell you, as I had earlier, that the fundamental principles of PM remain the same across industries, no matter where you go. So this is what I have built. What we do at InMobi is mobile advertising. What I built there is what we call as the performance advertising industry. What do you mean by performance ads products is, today you might be seeing Facebook or Instagram or maybe some other product like a TikTok or some other Takatak or some other kind of a video product like a Hotstar. So you will keep seeing ads on that. And whenever you see an ad, it is being served by an infrastructure which is behind the scenes, deciding what is most relevant to you and who is going to bid the highest price to show that ad to you. And it is all targeted, it is all decided in the manner of a millisecond or a microsecond sometimes. And that is how it gets presented to you. So the infrastructure behind it, of optimizations, of pricing, and deciding who is the right person to be targeted, is what we have built at InMobi. And I was a big part of that. I had a lot of my initial learnings at InMobi by building products there. And I went into Flipkart, where I built personalization and growth platforms, which is also for providing you a very personalized experience on your homepage on Flipkart. You might have seen, and if something has come as a targeted product to you, that okay, you might have bought something, and then you have seen that okay, the same thing is coming again and again as a recommendation. Probably that's something which I would have built, and then you'd have come up as that aspect. And the one of the other interesting things which I really liked building at Aether was launching a subscription product for a scooter, which is quite an interesting and a novel product in the market. So that was really interesting for me. But as I've already said, it didn't really matter that each industry was very different. You always have to think from a customer perspective, and the principles remain the same. I have some interests like artificial intelligence, network effects, and cinema. So if any of you want to connect with me, you can talk about these, and definitely I'll be happy to help you. So now we talk about the PM career and why it is such a popular choice these days, and it has become that popular in these recent years. So, if any of you know, the tech industry is largely born out of Silicon Valley. And the 90s was the boom of the internet, which spawned the entire internet economy across the world. And now, even in India, with the Geo giving us a boost in adoption of internet across the country at such a low data price. In fact, if you look at the data price in India, it is one of the lowest prices in the world. There's no other country where such low prices are available, and we are growing by leaps and bounds, and very, very close to becoming as big as China in terms of the internet economy. So that internet economy itself has led to us grappling with technology, and we see a lot of product management responsibilities come because of this internet industry. The popular PMs you might have seen in like the news or maybe other places, or people might have mentioned to you, who have actually become leaders of their companies. Actually, Sundar Pichai, who is currently the CEO of Google, Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft, Marissa Mayer, who was the CEO of Yahoo. All of them started out as PMs. Sundar Pichai started out as a PM for Chrome and Android, and Satya Nadella started out as a PM at Microsoft. Marissa Mayer was PM at Google for Google Maps. So all of you are using the products which each of these PMs might have built, and that's such a great path towards becoming the leadership at especially tech companies, because that's where you need to have the vision to build the next big thing, which is solving customers' problems. So that's essentially what is giving rise to PMs as an industry itself and a big popular career choice. So one of the other things which you also might have seen is the rise of startups everywhere, and we see that most of the people in your current batch or in the recent years, whoever are graduating, have been starting up increasingly. At in my time, not going for a campus placement was a very alternate path and quite uncommon. So nowadays it's become quite common. So whenever you start a company, the founder plays the role of a product manager, because you're defining what the company will be, what the product will be, what you will be solving as a problem for the customers, right? And that's one of the reasons also why product management is increasingly a more important career choice for people, because most of us, at least in the product industry I have come across, have always wanted to become entrepreneurs or work at startups. So this is quite relevant to the community here today, especially with ECEL at IITG, right? So the other aspect of it is the more glamorous aspect of it, which is about having a leadership position like a CPO, Chief Product Officer, as we call it. You get a seat at the table to influence the company's trajectory, even when the CEO has become and started the company, has become a big company. The CPO still has a big say in how the company moves and has a good direction of where the company should be and the trajectory of it. So there's lots of opportunity, lots of glamour to this role in the industry, and everybody is quite keen on getting into it. So I'm expecting all of you who have come here to listen and understand about this career. So, without much ado, I'll talk about who is a good PM. Also, by the way, before we launch into this part, I want to focus on the 90% of what makes a PM, because that's what gets you into product management, not really things like who can like crack the interviews, because cracking the interview is just 10% of the work. If you have the mindset for it, if you have the skills for it, you are able to make it to the PM even without actually getting the job, and that's essentially what I'm going to focus on today. So please bear with me, and if you have any questions, please type in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them towards the end of the section. And that is so. Uh, Most common myths of being a good PM is that you have to have a computer science degree. In fact, as you might have seen or known earlier, that I have graduated from a civil engineering degree at IIT. So I do not have computer science experience, but it is not really required. And I never gotten into any MBA course to study and finish it. So I don't have an MBA. So I'm still in product management, and I have been able to sustain it across multiple companies. So I can tell you from my own experience that it's not really that required. But it is a good to have, definitely. So that is something which I will not discount, both of them. And the experience part of it, a lot of companies do look for experience, especially from product management perspective, if you want to get hired. But you don't necessarily need the domain experience of that particular company. So you, as you might have seen, I have switched different companies from different industries. So you don't need specifically the domain understanding. You can pick that up as you work on that. What you might need is a little bit of a critical thinking, which we'll eventually talk about in the next couple of slides, maybe. So, since most of you must be either graduating or just recently graduated, I'll just talk about the entry level PM aspects in this talk today. So, the entry level PM is more of a generalist. So, what do you mean by generalist is somebody who looks at problem statements, who looks at any kind of a issue that the company has or the customer has, and then tries to solve it using a very logical or a structured thinking, right? And that's essentially what a generalist is. You don't need to have any special skills. So that is what we look for in an entry level PM. So as you keep on doing more and more of this, build products, build features, your specialization or your style kind of solidifies. So in the beginning, it is not that specific. You might be able to figure out, okay, I can do this as well. Like we might have different problems like, okay, how do I create a beautiful app? Or the other kind of person might be working on something like, okay, how do I solve this problem of delivering food to you within 35 minutes, which is just a delivery or logistics problem. So somebody else might be thinking about, how do I create a targeted ad, which I spoke about in the beginning. So each one of them could be building very different kind of products with very different kind of a skill set. But most of the time you start out as generalist, and then eventually you try to build specialization, which depending on what you like doing as a product manager. So which is one of the main reasons why, that brings me to the last point, that you need to work in multiple industries and on a variety of problem statements for gaining exposure to different ways of solving things, different ways of working on products, different ways of building products. So that is essentially what makes you a good PM, to take a cue on what your strengths are, what you could be doing well on, and that's essentially necessary in the beginning phases of your product management career. So that is the first part about who is a good PM. Now, these are the really technical aspects of what makes a good PM candidate. The key skills which any PM candidate needs to have are communication. The communication has to be top notch, essentially both verbal as well as written. And that is very important skill of a PM, because it's at the end of the day a people's job. You work with multiple teams, you work with multiple kinds of customers, you work with multiple situations. So you need to have excellent communication skills to not lose in the dark. The other aspect is what we call as product thinking. This is a bit of a inside terminology if you guys are not already introduced to it. But what product thinking is essentially is, how do you apply technology to regular everyday problem statements, right? Just a second. Hey guys, is my screen shared, Hardik?
No, sir. Your screen is not shared.
I'm sorry about that. Is it shared now?
Yeah, now it is shared.
I think I've been talking about this without my screen share. I'm sorry about it.
Yeah,
Can you see the slides?
yeah, sir.
Okay, great, great. So yeah, I was talking about product thinking. Um, I was talking about product thinking. I was talking about product thinking, and that's essentially what we call as the key skills of a product manager. In product thinking, what you do is you think about problem statements from a technology perspective. And Hardik, do let me know whenever you see my screen is not shared yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So in product thinking is about that how do you apply technology and solve your customer's problem. And it sometimes involves trying to get the best out of implementing the least amount of technology also. So there are several ways of discussing what product thinking is. This is a very deep topic. We may not be able to cover that in this particular session, but this is an essential skill which you need to keep on building as you grow in your career. And you start out with the same things. The rules are very simple. You have to solve a problem through technology, and that's what it is. So the third skill, which is very critical, is problem solving. So while we have communication, product thinking is also important. What you need is problem solving. Problem solving, you need to look at everyday problems. Say as simple as, uh, I want to spend the least amount of money to get from the place A to B. Whether I can take an auto, whether I can take a rickshaw, or maybe a cab. But it really depends on, it's not just the price of each of these things, but also the price of your time and the price of your comfort. What are you willing to pay for? So you need to really think about problems from all different angles, and how do you come up with the solution for that is what you consider as a problem solving skill. So this can be applied in any situation every day, right? So the other aspect of is the technical understanding. As I've already said about product thinking, it is more of um, applying technology to your regular problem statements which you find in your company wherever you're working, and how do you gain that technical understanding by actually talking to the engineers within the company, by understanding what problems they do face and how do they build the systems. So that is essentially what a technical understanding is. This could be for an entry level candidate very different. Like, you may not know what goes on within the company. What you should be doing is essentially thinking about how your regular everyday things work, because almost everything that we use today is a form of technology. In fact, something as simple as clicking on a switch and that opening your door is actually technology. So what goes on between the clicking of the switch and the door opening as a response to that is essentially what the process is. So there could be a surge of current which goes from the switch that activates some flap, and then it opens it. So this just simple flow of events is what the actual technology could be. The implementation of it will be in several thousand ways, and different companies might have implemented differently. There are many complexities which you might encounter it. Some things might be optimized for some kind of a cost. Something might be optimized for the convenience of it. Sometimes it might be optimized for the reliability of it, if it is probably in some kind of a very dangerous situation like a coal mine. So you really need to think about what kind of technology to apply in which kind of situation, and that's essentially what is defines a technical understanding in the PM role. So from you, on an everyday basis, if you start asking questions like how does Google search work, how does a Facebook work, how does an Instagram work, how does Uber work, so what does Uber do from the time you click on your screen and then you expect the cab to come to you directly, and what goes on behind the scenes is what we take call as technical understanding. You try to understand that, create a flow for it in your head, and what you think might be happening behind the scenes, right? So that is essentially what as a key skill for a product manager. The last one is execution and organizational ability. So what we mean by execution and organizational ability is because it's extremely critical to bring all these things together, which I talked about, because you have to work with people, you have to be very organized, because you are always flooded with requests from multiple corners of the company, from multiple customers, to understand what to prioritize, how to prioritize, and when can you solve them. So this is essentially important for delivering a good product and building a product. So these are the key skills which you need to develop as a PM candidate, which will be evaluated. If you have done kind of a work in the past, maybe in your college fest, maybe in some other side project, or maybe in your own thesis, right? You would be better off by explaining this aspect of it, maybe to the panel, whichever you are talking to, right? So these are the aspects which you think which are important for a PM. The next part about is the personal attributes. This is more of a personality aspect. So what we cannot really say that, okay, I will be all of these, and some of each one of us will have some parts of each one of these. So it's just that what are more critical is what I covered here. As a PM, you're fundamentally very curious. You need to always know why something happens and how it happens. So you need to be able to ask people, you need to be able to probe more, you need to be able to ask more questions about everyday things, you need to be able to ask questions about everyday situations. Why does this person react this way? Could be one very simple question. And understanding that itself is one thing. And typically people are curious about multiple things. You need to be curious about something to the extent that you understand it very deeply, not just surface level, that okay, today I'm curious about the politics, tomorrow I'm curious about the medicine, tomorrow I'm curious about the nature. So it cannot be wavering all the time. So you should go deep into it, because only when you go deep into it, you really explore the depths of it and understand. So this is more like a curiosity combined with research. So that is essentially what a PM candidate should be doing very well. The other aspect is being collaborative. You have to work with people, and hence taking people along is a key attribute of you, and you have to be personable, talk to people in a way that they feel like working with you, doing something and building something great, right? So leadership is an aspect which I think is very important for a PM candidate. In the entry level, maybe not very much, but eventually you need to be able to inspire people to build things, because you cannot do things on your own as a PM, and most of the times you will not be able to do anything on your own. You have to get people to do things, so, and hence leadership as a key attribute is very critical for a PM in the later stages. Empathy, meaning how well can you read the other person, and is very critical as a PM, because you are always solving a problem for some customer, and that customer will not be someone who you know of. They will probably have had different life experiences before becoming and using this product. So you need to be able to get into their shoes, understand how they're feeling, and then build a product or a solution for that problem statement of that particular customer. And hence, that's why empathy is also important. And most of the times, you are dealing with uncertain situations. You don't always have a clear cut answer to everything, or a direction, or a very solid understanding of what should be done. And you as a person should be comfortable dealing with uncertainty so that you can bring order and structure to that. So you should always be able to manage chaos, manage no direction, and that's where you as a person would thrive. So these are the key skills and attributes we consider as a important aspect of a good PM candidate. So, well, now we talk about who's not a good PM candidate. Uh, I don't know if you've already read these things before, but these are a few things which I have come across in my career, of people thinking about like what a PM role looks like, and them getting into it. So people like it because somebody said that PM is the CEO of the product. People like the word CEO, and they think that as a CEO you influence everything about it. But actually, as a CEO, you have a lot of authority. But as a PM, you do not have authority on anyone. Nobody reports to you, nobody answers to you. You have to influence them without authority, meaning with a collaborative nature, with a very logical and a rational argument, with a way to say that this is the right solution and this is something great that we have to be able to build. And hence, you have to build that influence. So if you are thinking that you would become the CEO of the product, it is absolutely not the reason to get into a PM role. And the second aspect of it is also one of the things which I've heard people say is, if you think you are the only one with creative ideas, do not come for this, because you might be better off as a designer, you might be better off as an engineer actually, who can do a lot of this individual contribution. As a PM, you cannot be the only one who's only doing creative ideas, because you'll have a bias for picking your own solutions, which may not be actually the right solution. You have to be an idea facilitator. So you need to be able to curb down your ego, if you have, about your own ideas, and picking up someone else's ideas if they're actually better than your idea, and give credit to them whenever is required. So you have to be the idea facilitator. And one of the other aspects of leadership which we spoke about earlier will come here, is that when things go right, you always deflect the success to your team, whoever has worked with you, typically your design team, typically your engineering team, or the business teams. And when the team fails, probably you take on that responsibility, because you are the one who is leading the project from the front. So that's necessarily what a PM candidate should be prepared for. And there are some people who I also met who said that they really like strategy and making high level calls and defining the vision of the company or the product, and hence they want to become a PM. And that is absolutely not the thing which you would be doing, especially at an early stage PM role. You would only be able to do that at a senior position, maybe much later in the role where you are doing for a couple of years, or at least 3-4 years. Or you could start your own company to do that if you want. The thing which you would be doing on a day-to-day basis is setting up meetings, finding people, following up with them. Have you done that? Have you done this? Pinging them maybe midnight to see if they have done their work, or doing really a lot of manual work, or running through a lot of analysis in Excel, or maybe some other writing queries. So, which are all very manual and effortful work. You need to do that and be comfortable with doing that. And you cannot be just thinking about strategy. So, that is essentially what you need to think about. And one of the biggest problems which I see a lot of entry level PMs face is about writing documents, which is about the PRD, the product requirement documents, as we call it. So you need to be comfortable writing every single thing down, because clear communication in written is very important for everyone to be on the same page in the team, because there are 10 people who are working and not everybody will understand it the same way. So hence you need to put things down in writing, especially for your own clarity and for everyone else's clarity, so that you can always refer to it and you don't need to be personally present to explain it to the team on what to build. So you need to be comfortable in writing crisp and exhaustive documentation. And not just that, but also you should be interested in technology. Otherwise, you would not be very comfortable doing that, because I was, in fact, yesterday writing a PRD where I had to write if this button gets clicked, the person will see a pop-up. But that is not just that. If this button gets clicked in a case where they do not pay, it looks different with a red boundary. Now, when does the red boundary come? Where does the red boundary come from? You have to write every single detail of that page. And this is just one small icon on the page. And there are 20 things on the page, and you have to write for every single detail of that page. And your app you are seeing is just like, it feels so smooth, but only the behind the scenes people are writing these things, making it very clear, and developers are building that for. So these are things which are very important. And if you are not comfortable with this, you're better off not getting into PM role. So that's about that. So now that we have established what a good PM is and how and what not to be a good PM is, we'll talk about the typical path to becoming a PM. Since a lot of you are in the early stages of your career, or maybe just graduating, you would be able to get an opportunity to become an associate product manager or a product analyst role in startups. So typically, a product manager is somebody who is better off in a startup. You would learn a lot, you'd get a lot of responsibility, and you'd also grow fast. So that's very, very useful in the beginning stages. And most startups with at least team size of 100 offer these kinds of roles. Other startups with less than this typically end up offering roles to people who have experience. So do not apply there. But if you do end up getting selected, that's great. You're taking a huge bet on you, so the expectation will be very high. But it might be better off if you try it with startups that have at least 100 people in them, especially if you do not have a PM experience. So there are several alternate paths to becoming a PM, because that's not the only path. And I've seen people become PMs from various roles. The most common one I have seen is a developer becoming a PM by realizing that, okay, I have been coding and I've been talking to a product manager who's helping me build these things. So that also is a route to becoming PM. There's an analyst or a data scientist. In fact, I started out as a product analyst and then eventually became a PM. Although since it was a startup at that point of time, it was almost like a PM responsibility. So it also depends on which kind of company you're working at. So, or a data scientist. So that is also a role which is very, very close to understanding your customer business, coding, as well as a lot of things. So that's also very easy role for transitioning into a PM career if you want to. Also, this third one is quite interesting. Most PMs you see, the experienced ones who come later in their career into product management, are always consultants most of the time. I've seen consultants from BCG, I've seen consultants from McKinsey, I have seen consultants from multiple other kinds of big four companies. And all of them say only one thing: we are never going back to consulting once we do PM. The reason is very simple. In consulting, you work at a level of strategy. You define the strategy and then leave it at that. Sometimes there are consulting firms which offer a different kind of consulting as well, but they are few and far and few. What the consultant really gets there is very little stake or skin in the game of actually implementing the solution that they're recommending. But as a PM, you own everything, even the idea, along with the implementation and the result. And hence, once you get used to that, you get a hype, and then you keep on doing that again and again. So that is essentially one very, very important skill. And a lot of the skills which we spoke about earlier, of organization, of communication, consultants are really valued for those things. So it's an easy transition, except for a mindset change. So that's the difference. And this is a very popular career shift. People who have spent at least 3-4 years in consulting. And the other aspect is a designer who does like UI or a UX design to a PM, because they work very closely with technology. They understand the user perspective, and that also leads to them becoming a PM on the consumer facing front of it. Then there is also the other business operations, which is more of a role where you are managing multiple people or teams and coordinating and all of that. So that also sometimes become PM, but you start off with a very, very specific role in that. The last one is more of people who end up starting companies. And I don't know if you already know, I don't want to discourage you guys, but 90% of the startups fail. So people who fail at their startups end up taking a break, or like entering a role within a company as a PM or a coder, depending on what their skills are. And most PMs also have been ex-founders. So that's one more path which you can become a PM. And each one of these roles give you an edge over a person with no experience. So it's not the end of the road if you're not able to crack the PM role right now. So there's a lot of other ways in which you could become a PM eventually, if you're really interested in getting into the PM career. So now we talk about how to approach companies. And we have the first and easiest route which we have is placements. The placements at your college are the best route to companies like Flipkart, Swiggy, and Uber. And it's better to just crack them. But if you do not want to, or if you miss that, the other way is a long one route. And I'll talk about those couple of routes here today. Target companies which have a Series A or later rounds of funding, right? Research the company. You have to research the company in such a way that you understand what the employees look like, where do they come from, how do they work, what is the company offering, what do others say about the company, news, or maybe other people on their blogs, what are they talking about, like why do they think the company is good or bad, right? And try to use their product if possible, and understand who their competitors in the same space are, and what are the competitors better at, and what is this company good at. And then try to do like a market sizing. They're very, very easy to estimate. This is what we call as the guesstimate. So we'll talk about it like a little later. And try to see if you can talk to their customers, for someone who you already know, or try to see what their Play Store, or if they have any forum, what their customers are saying about their product. So this really helps you understand the company, because you are now trying to apply to a company without a formal channel. And hence, this is very important to research. And once you know the company inside out from what you have done as research, you would be able to easily identify the problems that they currently face based on what their customers are facing as troubles, what you think the competitors are doing better. And you could put together a report of your ideas or your solutions, and prepare it and publish it, first of all. Like, that's the best way to sort of gain attention of companies, especially which are these, and these typically these Series A companies. They're very small, and they have enough attention to see who is talking about them, and they're really hungry for attention. And if somebody does write about them, they are very keen to know what their perspective is. And if your research is good, and if you really have good ideas, they would be definitely interested in talking to you, instead of you reaching out to them. But if they do not, you can directly send it to their senior leadership directly on LinkedIn, or maybe if they have a company email ID, send it to that. And you could also explain why you might be able to solve it. So that's an alternate route, apart from placements, if you are not missing that. And if this also is not working out, the best thing to do is, the next best actually, is reach out to your friends, ask for a referral, but thoroughly do your research. to see if you could fit the role, because I've seen a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn or other places with no context, no understanding of what they want to apply to, why they want to be applying to that, and which role especially. So it's very important to understand why you think you'd be suited for a role, and you should be able to give that context to the other person who you're reaching out to, and then they'll be very, very keen on referring to you, because they're putting their credibility on the line for referring you. There is a lot of incentive also which happens within companies for reference, so that is more of a side benefit of it. But really, if you do identify referrals, you have to also try to tell them which exactly the role that you're preparing for, and what is it that makes you the best candidate for that. So the other route for getting into product management is, if you are not able to try the first three, or even if you tried them, maybe this also is an interesting alternate route. Uh, Please do explore forums and communities. There are several communities. There are a couple of communities I'm recommending here. The product folks, a lot of Indian PMs are on this. They have done really good work during the COVID time by spreading the word, and a lot of them are on Twitter also. So you could follow them, or try to join the Slack community. Same thing about creators of product. It's also an interesting product community. You could join there. So they have PM specific job boards in addition to the community of PMs being there, so that you could just by joining these communities, you could learn a lot about product management. You could also sort of connect with other PMs and see what their companies do, and further understand better about where you're trying to apply. So now we come to the last part. As I've already said, 90% of the work is before the interview. In the interview, it is just 10% of it. So do not just prepare for the interview. Do all of these other things before you get to the interview. Understand what a product manager does, and understand what is each company looking for in the product manager. So typically, the job interview process is very straightforward. You start with a screening call. If it is a placement, these things don't apply. This is very different format. So please do not consider this to be that. This is for a regular interview process apart from placements. So in that, there's a screening call where somebody talks to you on the phone, or maybe some other video call, and understand how you're thinking, whether you're fit for the culture, fit for a product management role. In this, mostly they try to understand your product thinking and problem solving. So that is the second part of it, and try to question you on things like the things which I mentioned earlier about how does Uber work when you click a button and then reach out to the driver reaches. So what is the flow in between? So you could answer that question by thinking about you sending your location request to a server from where you are, and what is the kind of cab that you're requesting. So there's a lot more detail to it, but I'm just simplifying it for you in terms of what you expect. And then it's sending a request to other cab drivers in the area within, say, a 3 kilometer radius or a 10 kilometer radius, depending on the density of the cabs that are available there. And then amongst them, who accepts it the first gets assigned to you based on a logic again, right? So there is a bunch of rating which the customer has, the driver has, and what is the distance, what is the time it takes, and how much is the money that you're typically willing to pay, and what is the driver willing to accept, and those other things. They're all considered, and then once it is assigned, it is being sent to you. So there's a lot that happens in between. So being able to explain that process, or at least think through that process and take a stab at how it might be, is what product thinking or what problem solving could be. So and typically after that, some companies do this, some companies may not do this. They ask for a case study, they send you like an assignment where you might want to just put down some work and then send it across. So they evaluate you on that, because most interviews cannot evaluate a person within 30-40 minutes. So this also gives you a very good understanding of how the person thinks, how they are able to write it down. And as I've already mentioned, writing things down, presenting it is very important. So this case study also acts as a very good filter for people who do not have that ability to write things down very clearly. And the last interview is more about tech understanding and domain understanding. So this is something which you would be easily able to crack if you use tech products on a regular daily basis, and also research about the company. You would know a lot of things about that particular domain. So should be very specific. They will not go very deep into the particular domain, but just trying to understand how interested are you in it, how knowledgeable about the particular domain are you. And the last is about the culture fit. This is more of a startup mindset versus different startups are different kinds of things that they value. So this is more like an HR round. So that is typically the process of the job interview. So the last part about building the skills. So I have a couple of recommendations for you guys. So there are a bunch of ways in which you can build the skills even before actually targeting companies or reaching out to them. Start a side project. It could be as simple as expense management, right? All of us have some kind of a money needs, and we have an inflow every month and outflow every month. So just try to create an Excel sheet which has an inflow and outflow, and try to see if you can automate that. And there are various ways to do that. And if that format works for you, you might have created like a formula of sorts of which category is how much spend, and where are you going, how much are you spending, how much are you saving on, who do you owe to. If you are able to create like a small Excel sheet for yourself, that itself is a simple product. The quick acid test to check out whether what you have built is good enough or not is to see, apart from you, who else likes to use it. If you can share that with somebody else, and then they are also able to use it and like it, then you build something really well, and it's liked by other people, so you solved a problem. So this is the fastest way to learn product management, not just Excel sheet, but solving everyday problems. Build something. If you have the ability to code, try coding something and then build it. If you do not have the ability to code, that's also fine, because you could use no code tools nowadays. There is a lot of no code tools available. You could use them to build basic stuff like automations, by connecting your home switches to like your computer or your cell phone, and these kinds of things are already possible. So that is one side project. The other aspect is try to write blogs on everyday products, your take on how products work and what you think is good about them, what do you think is bad about them. Then join the product communities I've already shared, read newsletters. I have gained tremendously from these two newsletters, Anderson Horowitz, A16Z, and Reforge. Reforge is a growth blog on how growth product management and growth works within tech companies. Anderson Horowitz is a VC, venture capital fund, but they write about various industries, and they invested in very, very big companies in the last 10-15 years. So I've learned tremendously from their perspectives on how the tech industry evolves. So read these newsletters. There are a ton of other things. If you are really keen on following people, you could follow some famous PMs on Twitter. Shreyas Doshi is one. There's one person called Lenny Rachitsky. Shreyas Doshi used to work at Yahoo, Twitter, Google, and recently Stripe. Lenny used to work at Airbnb, and they put out really good content on Twitter about like what product management is. Try to follow them and learn them. And there are like a bunch of books, but I especially recommend these two by Marty Kagan. He's been running in product management for the last 30-40 years probably. So he's written like a book called Empowered and Inspired. Read them both. You'll get a lot of knowledge about product management. So that's really all of it. And if you want to follow more people on Twitter, you could reach out to me or follow me on Twitter or see who I am following. I'm following a lot of product management folks in the industry, so you could just follow same people, and some of them might be very related to fintech or EVs, depending on who my interest was at that point of time. But you could also develop your own. So just follow them, and that's the end of it. So yeah, thank you guys. Thanks a lot for your patience. And that's the end of my talk now. If we have questions, we can talk about questions.
I'm going to tell you some questions. Akbir asks, I'm an MBA student with bachelor's in computer science. Through there are APM roles or internships. Most recruiters expect candidates to have experience or have a portfolio. For a candidate who is new to this field, how to make a CV look eligible?
Got it. So as I said, APM roles or internships, right? You need not always have a portfolio. but try to look up the company, try to understand what they might be facing as an issue, try to create a small report, even if it is like a small presentation, that's also fine, and send it across. That gives you a far more credibility than a person who is just reaching out with a simple CV saying that, hey, please take a look at my CV. So that is very essential. So having a bachelor's in computer science is definitely good. And, you know, the experience part of it, they will skip over if you do share something like an insight, which they might not have seen, but your perspective could be very valid, and you could be giving them a great idea. So that will definitely catch their attention. So that would be my suggestion here.
Okay, the next one is how will you manage underperforming members?
Did not understand this question.
Okay,
Could
we'll
you
move to the next one.
explain somebody who? What do you mean by underperforming members within the team, at the company, or like what exactly is the question about?
I think he's talking about a team.
Okay, yeah, it's a interesting question. So there are always different reasons why somebody is underperforming. It could be because of the stage of their life where they might be dealing with something in their life that we are unable to solve, and they're not able to deal with that. That could be the reason. Some other times it is just about motivation. You need to really understand what is the reason behind why they're underperforming. If it is about motivation, you need to understand if the problem is with the kind of work that they're being assigned, if it is about something else which is personal, or maybe there could be some other reason altogether. You try to understand what the problem is, try to address it, and try to solve it. And if things don't work really well after like some time, giving it some time, you may not be able to be very productive together as a team. So you have to have a tough conversation. But typically, you always start to try to understand the problem, and then see what can we do to solve it. So yeah, if that answers the question.
Yeah, next question is can you please elaborate more on how to move from operations to PM role? How can one map their skills achieved in operations role to PM ID?
Yes, so that's a valid question, and I mentioned that operations roles typically entail you to create a lot of process and structure. And as a PM, you need to think very critically about the way of a right framework of a structured thinking, breaking down everyday things into small pieces, breaking down big problems into smaller problems, and then creating a solution out of it. So attacking the smallest problem with the biggest impact. So as an operations person, you end up gaining that skill. So whatever role you're working in, you would be interfacing with somebody from the product or the technology team. So you would be able to give suggestions on how you could make things better, because they're building some interface for you. You could say that, okay, can you do this as well? That will help. So if you can come up with more and more ideas, you'll start seeing yourself as a person who is giving more and more solutions. So at some point, you'll start realizing that, okay, I can also suggest solutions. I can also start coordinating with people and creating new solutions. So that is probably one way to become a PM from an operations role. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Next one is what are the knowledge area relevant to doing a project?
Knowledge area. Okay. So I do not understand this question completely. If this means getting understanding of the product before getting into it, or then maybe I'll take that as the question and then answer it.
Yeah, you
So
can proceed.
yeah, so most of the times you do not have complete understanding of the technology behind it, of or the actual problem behind it. And that is essentially why curiosity as a skill is very important for a product manager. So you need to dig deeper than the obvious things. You need to ask questions to the people who already are facing that problem, or who are solving that problem by as an engineer, or as a product person, or as a designer. So you need to ask them why you are solving it this way, and if they give you an answer, you will start to put together a picture of what is actually happening from different aspects and different perspectives. And that is when you start to propose a solution, and then you test it out with each one of these people who you spoke to. Hey, what do you think about this solution? Does this work? What do you think about this kind of a solution? Can this work? And when you start talking to them, they will also have suggestions on how to improve that. Maybe this will not work for this reason. If you try this, maybe this will work. And hence you will start gathering a solution along with your colleagues, along with the people who are in your team, and then build a final solution. So that is essentially how you build the knowledge, even though you do not know it. So hope that answers this question of how do you build the knowledge areas for a relevant project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the next one is, how do a product manager communicate a failure to his or her team?
So yeah, this is an important thing. In fact, I did have quite a few failures as a product manager, and most of the times when you're building a product, uh, you're always building on a hypothesis that you think that this is the solution. You agree after discussions with multiple people that this is the solution. And when you're building a solution, it could be wrong. You could be wrong. But the part of it is that you need to define what does a successful solution look like before actually building it, which is what we call in the PM role as a success metric. What is your success metric for this particular product? So how do you define that success metric? So, for example, we talked about this particular problem statement of going from place A to place B. What is your success metric? Is it the price that you pay to go from A to B? Or is it the time that you take from going from A to B? Or is it the comfort that you need from going from A to B? So, you need to define what the success metric is. And if you did not achieve that, then probably it is a failure. And then you treat that as a learning and see why you have not been able to achieve the success, and try to understand what can you do to make it better, and hence go back and try to build the next version of it. And this that brings me to one very important point of a product management, is that you are never a product manager by building one product. You are a product manager by building at least 3 or 4 iterations of the same product over a period of time. And that is the key difference between a consultant and a product manager. A consultant stops at the first version. A product manager sticks with the problem for 3 4 times, builds and tries out multiple solutions, and hence changes the final solution to one which is relevant. And that is essentially what creates your improvement in success metric. In fact, over the 3 iterations, your first success metric, if you wanted to achieve say 40%, you probably would have stayed at, say, in the first version about 10%. And through changes to figuring out what are the other issues through fourth or fifth iterations, probably you'll reach 35, 38%, and then finally 40 or even more, right? That is essentially what a product manager does. So it is not a failure that you as a person did, but it is as a team you didn't understand, you didn't find. So as in when you keep building multiple products, you start gaining a sense of what really works, what doesn't work, and then get better at taking decisions of these sorts in the future.
Yeah, and the last one is, how to approach companies for PM intern. One has to do something different, or the process remains same.
It's kind of similar. It's very very similar to a PM interview. However, the stakes are lower. And what I would suggest for an internship is not to approach small companies. If you approach small companies, probably they do not have the people to guide you and give you direction as an intern. And since you are an intern, unfortunately, you're also temporary, and that means that you're expendable as a person in the team. So it may not be that a greater deal at a smaller company, but if a company formally opens an internship role, it's a better place to apply, and reaching out to them for a full-time role is far better. And a paid internship is usually always done through a formal announcement. So try to reach out to only companies where you know that a formal internship program exists, and then apply for them.
Okay. I think we are done for today.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for joining us today and sharing your wonderful experience and insights with
Thank you.
us. So, yeah, that's it from our side. Stay tuned for further updates regarding the next episode.
Thank you very much, Hardik. This is very great, and thanks to Isel and Ayush and the team for